will not overrun the scheduled time of 5:15. That means that people cannot speak for more than 3.5 minutes. Question and answer. Would you like to begin the process? No, we need to go. We're the bookends. Are you one of the panel?
I'm on the panel. I'm not a chair.
Great. You're not a
So
chair.
I'm saving a chair for the chair.
The chair's beside you.
Yeah,
Yes.
I
Okay.
No, the actual chair is beside you.
You're the actual chair.
Oh, that's the actual chair. I'm the actual chair. There are two chairs, one on each end.
Oh,
And you're on the panel.
okay. I understand. I'm sorry. I apologize.
So the panel are going to start. Can I counsel you to begin? The rules of this game, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, are that the panel members who represent every major faith community that is represented in this conference,
And Humanism, which is the faith
faith and belief community, are assembled here, and they have the chance to either answer a question that we put to them or to ask the chairs a question. So let's just go down the road with the microphone, and you are first. And please introduce yourselves.
Thank you. My name is Rik Hospers. I'm a humanist chaplain from Delft in the Netherlands. I'll take the gamble of inviting a question.
Okay, Rik, I'm really interested in what most annoyed and provoked you at this conference.
Asking a humanist in a mainly religious environment. No, I've been quite pleased, but I will answer your question. No, I think there is. We had an interesting discussion just in the last workshop where we talked about interfaith dialogue, and one of the things that came up was, okay, does interfaith dialogue require us to take a relativist position towards our own religion or faith or belief? And I'm a great believer in what is a technique of non-violent communication, which is not directed towards arresting your own beliefs, but it's about exploring the other person's needs and being quite pragmatic and working from there. And I think that holds great promise.
So you don't get angry or annoyed?
I don't get angry and annoyed. I do get worried when people confuse having and staying faithful to their own beliefs as a license not to listen and not to be sensitive to the other's needs. Thanks.
Sticking to time. Amra, please introduce yourself, and you have this choice to make.
Okay. I'm Roberta. I'm from the University of Portsmouth. I'll ask a question.
Okay.
Okay. In the era of post-secularism, we've seen a rise of religion. I certainly have on university campuses. I've been in 3 different secular universities, and in the prayer halls, the students cannot pray in one session. They have to have a number of sessions, and this continues. And there's often 3 guards, sometimes 2, 1 seen in front of the prayer rooms, and students often ask me why these security guards. The answer is given is to do with safety and security. We can only have so many numbers, but of course there's a conflict there for the students feeling they're being monitored, or perhaps for another reason. As a Muslim, we are taught that the best form of jihad, which is striving, is to speak a word of truth. To speak a word of truth in front of power. So our university leadership is in that position at the moment. My question is that, do chaplaincies become that ethical conscience for the universities to guide them on this ethical path, rather than being allured by profits? So do we, as chaplains, have a role to play as the ethical conscience of the university?
You also have a choice who answers it, and my co-chair would like to introduce himself, so you have a fair choice.
Okay, well, I will use my...
Anthony, I'll bring you down. I think it should come without me knocking any more water over.
When it stretched that far, else I'll use my preacher's
Just
voice.
stand. There you go. Stand forward for a minute. I'm sure it's very close.
Okay, well, my name is Anthony Reddie. I work in Oxford, as you know. Does chaplaincy have a role? I would say yes, but I would say cautiously. And the reason I say that is that I'm always slightly cautious about people who, or groups who set themselves up as somehow being a moral conscience for other people, because there's a presumption that there's something automatically more ethical about a chaplaincy than other parts of the university. I'm not always entirely convinced about that. There's someone who works in Oxford where the chaplaincies are very much built into the colleges, and they're largely a form of Anglican hegemony. So I'm not sure that those places are necessarily going to be the ones that are going to give us great ethical guidance, which is not to say that they can't. It's just not to assume that that should be the case. But I think in the ideal world, perhaps they should. But I think one of the interesting things that came out, I think, from this morning, is the place of chaplaincy, and whether be paid or not paid gives greater independence and agency. And I think there are different ways of seeing that. So yeah, so I say potentially yes, but I wouldn't want to assume that it's a place of automatic virtue.
That's not what it was. No, you can't say anything more.
I think I'm going to chance a question.
You've got
No, I'm going to chance a question.
Are you going
You're going to
to
introduce
Yeah.
yourself?
Oh, I don't have to introduce myself. I've done it 4 times this week. My name's Rabbi Alex Goldberg. I'm the Dean of Religious Life and Belief at the University of Surrey, leading a team of 25, including 15 chaplains from 8 faith and belief traditions, and proudly so.
I think this one has to go to Anthony,
It is, yeah.
the question.
He's
Oh, he's asking you the
he's
question.
got a mic. Oh, no, we've
Yes,
got...
I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
Please do. I'm worried about the water. I believe in prophetic chaplaincy, but the whole splitting of the Red Sea thing hasn't quite happened yet.
This is my question, I think, for you. But I guess it could be asked of anyone, obviously.
I'm here now.
Said you take the question. Is that I think when you're in a representative position, there's always that danger of you becoming the essentialized representative of a whole tradition that is very, very varied. Does that bother you or not? Or do you have no such concerns in terms of, so that in your context you are the Jewish person?
He's representing Judaism here, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
indeed. So,
Ooh. So I have to deal with the opposite. I'm the only coordinating chaplain in Europe who's a rabbi. And the mistake often made is that non-Christians and non-Anglicans can't do this role. I have Muslim colleagues from around the country phoning me up every week, telling me to stay in position, because every week I stay in position, even though I am male and I am pale, I am smashing a glass ceiling. So I will stay. And I know I've got a great colleague in Cardiff Metro who's smashing that ceiling with me, and I hope there'll be many more to come. I am very conscious on a campus when I'm dealing with my Jewish students. 170 Jewish students, and I do that job for free. I do, not the dean, the Jewish bit. I have 10 denominations of Judaism. Somebody said, can we have a chaplain for each denomination? I said, yeah, I said, yes, the rabbi and the, we'll get 10 phone boxes, and the rabbi and the 2 students can sit in there. He's a shul when he got a phone box, right? And I think I want to hear my students and walk with them. And I'll answer it in this way. During lockdown, there's many, many different forms of identity, and intersectionalism and different heritages. And a lot of my students come from multiple heritage, multiple identity. We did we were given the Facebook site by our student union, not the building, just the Facebook site. We were supposed to be joined by other products like Pop Music Channel, Discussion Channel, but the God Squad turned up, and the Humanists, and the God Squad, but the chaplains turned up, and we ran the thing for 18 months, 800 programs, 1 million views to our students. And in that time, we looked, the Black Lives Matters movement arose, and I met for 3 nights with our Pentecostal Black Church chaplain and a number of our student leaders online, and I listened for hours. And they wanted me to go on a program with them, and I said, I can't, yeah, I can, I can't. So eventually we agreed that I would be invited on and to listen again, as long as somebody else took the host for the 2nd, 3rd and 4th program. We were speaking for 5 weeks to 7 people in the university. That's all we cared about. Thousands watched, 7 people in the university, the 7 members of our executive board, and we changed the thing. We changed policy. My Jewish students, my black Jewish students came to me and said, what about us? So we created a program called Juniverse, and we discussed that. We had another program with our musical drama students who had written a musical drama piece about being Jewish, being alienated, and also being LGBTQI, which we called Juniverse. And we had a very adult, grown-up, I think 21st century conversation about this in the rounds. And I think we have to listen to our students and also give them access to others when they want others. It's all about access and referral. So it's not just about representation, and we have diverse representation. And I've run out of time, because I could go on forever, because I'm a rabbi.
Good God, this is a very hard act to follow. I'm from the University of Surrey, Guildford, and I am a Sikh, and I'm a Sikh chaplain. And before becoming a chaplain, I used to work at the University of Surrey, and let me put it this way, I could go on and on like Alex.
Hang on, what's your question?
My question is, I'm sort of backing what Alex, I'm just continuing where Alex left off.
No,
He's breaking the doors and I'm standing behind him, saying, Alex, go on, do it, do it. We are breaking doors. We are establishment, we are challenging the establishment, we are changing the mindset of chaplaincy at Surrey University.
Tell us your name. Tell us your name.
My name is Bahadur Singh.
Bahadur Singh, can you either ask a question of one of us, or we will ask you a question? Which do you prefer?
Ask me a question.
How long have you been? This is a preliminary question. How long have you been a chaplain?
About 10 years now.
Okay. In those 10 years, is chaplaincy in your institution in a better place now than it was 10 years ago, or a worse place in the institution? And if so, why? And
Can I excuse myself from the room, please?
If that's too personal,
No, that's fine.
in 10 years' time, where do you think it's going? Where do you like to see it? What's the big thing that's going to happen? You've only got 3 minutes to answer this question.
The answer is chaplaincy is a hell of a lot better now than it was 10 years ago. It's been a game changer since Alex has taken this role on, and I can visualize another 10 years, it'll be totally, utterly different to what it is now, but it will be very, very positive in the right direction. And we feel, all the chaplains, the whole team, we are like brothers and sisters, and we work as a team. You know, I don't look at myself as a Sikh chaplain, I look at myself as a chaplain for the University of Surrey. So whatever comes to me, I deal with it when I have to. And I'm sure Alex does the same, and Mita, my sister, she does the same. That's how we work.
Wonderful. Oh, that's excellent. That way.
Oh, yes, I do.
Mine.
I'm Jim Walters, and I am Director of the Faith Centre of the London School of Economics. I'll put a question to either Linda or Anthony, whoever wants to answer it, because the title of this plenary includes the phrase post-secular university. And I wonder how we might understand that. Do we understand that in terms of in student experience and the student bodies that we have on campus, where we're seeing moreover, religious identity that we need to attend to? Are we understanding a post-secular university maybe more in the terms that Linda was talking about in her keynote as a kind of community of somewhat sort of fragmented meaning-making? Or are we thinking of post-secular university in the curriculum, where secular assumptions in knowledge production are being challenged?
I'm just going to answer in terms of the UK, if that's okay, because I know more about that. Universities are differentiatedly secular. I could see that when I ran a big program called Religion and Society and saw where the disciplinary, applications came from. So some of the bits you wouldn't think of are the most secular, like performing arts, for example. It's not, you often think, the sciences. It's not necessarily. Some sciences are very secular. Psychology is very secular. Not all sciences are. Some are quite agnostic. So it's a very differentiated picture, number one. I wouldn't say the university is secular or non-secular or post-secular. You have to look more closely at what it is. You're right, I do think it's a very pluralistic, fragmented, for good and ill. I mean, it should be pluralistic, but there are also real problem areas in that, and it not knowing what it is. And I think a certain nervousness in the sector and in senior management, that risk aversion at the moment pushes them to the most sort of neutral secular position in a really unhelpful way. And we've got to get past that somehow.
Thank you. Hi everybody, I'm Monica Sanford. I'm the Assistant Dean for Multi-Religious Ministry at Harvard Divinity School, and I am a Buddhist chaplain. And since I got roped onto this panel 20 minutes ago and haven't thought of a good question, I will take a question from one of the chairs.
Anthony, your turn.
Oh, my turn. Oh. Yeah, I'm always interested in people's stereotypes and how we respond to them. So how do you respond to the perception that Buddhism is kind of this, I guess, well, in the Western context, a broad catch-all for people of a broad hippie disposition?
Well, a couple of different ways. First of all, I remind them that 2/3 of the Buddhists in the United States are of Asian American heritage. And the fact that the Buddhist dominant image in the United States is the hippie is a form of white supremacy. And that's important to recognize. And in a study we did where we collected surveys of 425 Buddhist chaplains in North America, 60% or more of them were white. And I believe that's a problem for the profession, because we're not drawing on the full talents of the Buddhists who are in North America and those who have carried this tradition forward for thousands and thousands of years in the profession. So that would be my first challenge to that stereotype. And when I was hired in this position, that actually came up in the interviews, and they're like, what would you say to this? And I would say, if there is an Asian American candidate or an Asian origin candidate who has these qualifications or maybe has different qualifications, hire them, honestly. Hire them, don't hire me, because it will make a difference to the students and to the program going forward. There wasn't, but I am very keen that as we move forward and continue to hire and grow these programs at universities, that representation is very key.
Thank you. Hello everyone, I'm Vineet Chander. I serve as Assistant Dean for Hindu Life and Hindu Chaplain at Princeton University. So I have a question for our chairs, and I want to apologize actually. I was under the impression that Kristen was one of the chairs, so I formulated this question with Kristen in mind, but I would love to have Anthony also share some thoughts.
We'll channel Kristen for you.
Please do. Anyway, the question goes something like this. Today and in the preceding days, we've heard a lot about and have talked a lot around a kind of a shifting and a reimagining that's happening with chaplaincy, where increasingly perhaps chaplaincy is moving beyond categories like religion or even spiritual into more of the realm of, in some places, to be among several offerings of wellness, of diversity, inclusion, equity, and there certainly have been many gains for chaplains to be part of these larger conversations. And at the same time, I wonder if each of you could maybe speak to some of the losses. And I'll be a little bit more provocative. Is there a possibility that in resituating ourselves in our field so much in the realm of wellness that we're being penny wise and pound foolish and are actually writing ourselves out of a job?
Anthony says it's you first.
Oh, does he? Thank you. It's good to finish it.
We didn't hear that.
Party while people are still enjoying themselves. I think that there's a danger that you work in a role in higher ed, well, in anything, but then gets taken over, by the credentialed people. And of course, you can see that in relation to pastoral work and what happened there. I talked about the two areas of values and moral injury and working with moral conflicts as one possible area where no one's occupying it at the moment because it's a risky space to be in. And no one's quite sure what credentials they have that would make them able to operate in it, but it's a very gaping hole in higher education at the moment that some chaplains might want to do some work in. I talked about meaning making as well as a much more traditional thing. And there have been some wonderful talks that I've heard today about how chaplains do meaning making. I really like the point you make about doing it intersectionally so that you don't do something on religion, you do it on some other topic like dealing with death. But students are free to bring in their religion and belief perspectives of whatever kind. That seems a very sensible way of dealing with the big things about meaning that students want to talk about and that there's no space to talk about. So I was sort of thinking about areas where there's a need but no one's really supplying it. But I think you're right that there are dangers as well in being the people who always pick up the pieces that no one else wants to handle. They're a bit like toxic waste and a bit too dangerous. And then when you do it successfully, someone else is going to get credentialed and take it over from you. And that's a real danger. It actually happens to the teaching of RE in schools in this country as well. RE teachers complain about that being the dumping ground for the issues that no one else wants to deal with. So that it is religion has to, because of its marginal position, has to deal with this danger all the time. Thank you for reminding me. Anthony.
Yeah, this may be an unpopular view, maybe because I'm not a chaplain and I'm not a religious leader. I've never been in a representative position. I think for me, praxis is always central to my understanding of what we do. So if one is helping and supporting and enacting, then whether it comes under one particular rubric or another is not something that I'm particularly overly bothered about, in all truth. I think I'm also slightly wary about trying to think about what the consequences are about things that we can't foresee. That's not to say that we don't think about it, but just as 100 years ago, people would say, well, we can confidently predict the disappearance of religion, and of course that didn't happen. So therefore, the fact that chaplains might be pushed into a more generic catch-all around well-being rather than something more specifically identified or bound with in terms of talking about religion. Well, that may happen, but actually probably won't, because people's predictions didn't come true either. But fundamentally for me, it's about what's the good that we're doing. What's the practice here that's being done? And I think so long as that is effective and people have a sense that this is a safe space where they can help to find meaning making, then I'm not particularly bothered with what rubric that is understood or defined. How do we time?
Well, we've got 15 minutes, so we could do rapid fire. And the deal was, if you asked first time, then you have to be asked second time or vice versa. It's got to go really fast. So, are you all up for it?
Say they want to send their questions.
No, I mean that if you, like, you asked Rik a question first time, so Rik has to ask you and Anthony a question this time, but it's all got to happen 1 minute per person. So, are you ready for that?
It's like a radio fog game.
Okay. You're co-chairing, so I shouldn't be saying any of this.
I've all got to be Humphrey Littleton. So.
But shall I just pass over to Rik? Is that all right, Anthony? Okay. Got to be fast.
Shouldn't we recognise that secularism or atheism or all these other isms that are not religions are also belief systems, which means not just that they should be on equal footing, but that they also are, they may be exclusive of religious beliefs and should be challenged as such and not seen as some objective standard as is currently, I think, the dominant discourse in society. That's a statement, and I'd like to invite your response to that.
Only one of you. Who's going to take it?
Oh, yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
I asked a question, so this time I'm being asked a question.
Yeah. Who's going to ask Amra?
That's the answer. Sorry.
I guess the question that's been asked of someone else, but I thought it was a very, very good question. So how would you like to see chaplaincy develop in your context in the next 10 years?
1 minute.
In a minute.
Wow. I would. Our chaplaincy is called multi-faith chaplaincy, and there's 3 Christian chaplains and 1 Muslim part-time chaplain. So I would like it to be truly multi-faith, truly understanding. I don't think even my faith is understood. So it will take time, and 10 years is a good amount of time for us to truly develop multi-faith chaplaincy, where we will have a lot more people and understand each other and understand why Muslims are so demanding, for instance. You know, they always want prayer spaces, and you know, we've given them enough. You know, and we've got a tiny little quiet space, we're told. And all the Christians have one tiny little room, whereas you Muslims are always asking for more. Stop. So I want people to understand each other, truly understand why we need to pray and the needs of prayer. Because it's like, for us, it's like having a meal, or we don't think about it. It's just natural to us. Go somewhere and students won't be complaining that they are paying £18,000 and yet they don't have a prayer space. So hopefully that won't happen within 10 years, and we'll have more chaplains from other faiths. We truly understand each other, and everyone would be happy and jolly.
Where is that from your mouth to Hashem's ears? A question, because I was asked, I'd love you to answer this. 20 years' time, I'm probably approaching retirement, and how many chaplains are at Oxford University then, and how many of them are, let's talk about college chaplains, and what is their denomination or faith in 25 years' time?
Yeah, well,
and where's the application form as well?
Yeah.
Can you repeat the last remark for the audience?
Yeah, and where's the application form?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, well, I'm tempted to say that notions of change and Oxford don't belong in the same sentence. So I have a suspicion that in 10 years' time, or 20 years' time, there may not be that appreciable difference.
There'll be more.
So, you know, yeah, I mean, I think the inbuilt way in which, and this is no disrespect to my Anglican brothers and sisters, of course, but it is interesting how there is an inbuilt bias, not just to Christianity in particular, but to a particular expression of it, that goes almost unseen and uncommented on. And so I think at the very least what one would hope, even if there's not radical change, and like I said, radical change and Oxford really do not belong to the same place at all, is at least an awareness that we need to start a conversation around what diversity of optimism looks like for a student body that is becoming more diverse. But actually that the provision for what serves them is.
I have a dream. Honestly, I have a dream.
Preach it, brother, preach it.
That one day, chaplaincy will be embedded in the university system, like anything else. We fund sports facilities, we fund other activities, and chaplaincy should be funded like other activities in terms of, it should be founded into the system.
And what's your question, Bahadur?
My question is, what's your view on this?
Sherry Maguire, show me the
Yes.
money.
That would be very good. How are you going to get there? That's. But I can't ask another question. It's an open question to reflect on. Big donation.
I'm just taking a question.
Show me the money.
You have to take a question.
James is taking a
Yeah,
question.
Bill Gates. Yeah.
Is he on to-
Get on to Bill Gates. Someone needs to phone him.
Yeah.
Linda says get on to Bill Gates, and James says he has to take a question. I think it's your turn to ask a question.
Who's then is it? Oh, it's James.
Yes.
Are available.
James. If a student asked you what is the meaning of life for you, James, what would you say? No pressure, James. No pressure.
1 minute.
I would speak from my position, and our university talks a lot about positionality and owning that, and I believe that God is gathering up all things in Jesus Christ. And I try to live out that gathering up of all things in the interfaith work I do and in the programs that we're trying to run through this centre. And I think that vision of gathering up all things, of building bridges, of connecting people, is one that also translates beyond the Christian tradition.
Now, I intentionally said I didn't have a question. But, I think as a Buddhist, sometimes I have to reckon with being in the position, like maybe some of our humanist brothers and sisters, of hearing statements like that and then living through the immediate thing that goes through my brain, which is, that's not me. God's not gathering me up, is he? Maybe he is, but I guess my question for either Anthony or Linda, sorry, my brain, would be, how would you speak to your institutions and your student bodies who are so deeply founded on Christian hegemony and that and those sentiments that you just shared, Jim, they're so inclusive and well-intentioned and welcoming, and yet just rub the wrong way sometimes. So how do we work through that of, I know you want to include me, but the way you want to include me bothers me. How do we work through that collectively?
Anthony, go first. And you just say, yeah.
I think it starts with the point that you just made, which is to help people to see the implications of what they're saying, because I'm not aware that people are always aware of the implications of what they're saying, of what they have said. And I work in a college that was founded by Baptists, so it's notionally a Christian college. But actually people come from all different walks of life and different paths. And we also are a place where we train people for ministry, so we have people attend the Baptist ministry. And sometimes the hardest conversations are usually over informality of meals.
So I think your mic's gone off.
Yeah.
You just start again.
Yeah,
Sorry.
so I think it starts with helping people generally to see the implications of the words that they have used. They're not always aware of the implications of that. And then I think it's about how then do we create places where the critical consciousness or the kind of conscientization process that I think should be central to all good pedagogy enables a generosity of speech that doesn't deny the truth claims that people want to hold on to, but is aware of the fact that if you're in a diverse place, making assumptions that assumes that all of us are in the same place, although well-meaning, and there's a lot to be said for a commonality that says that actually that we're in a shared enterprise of being human, can also be aware, as you just have said, of actually a kind of homogenization that comes out of empire that says that basically what we want really, that is everyone has to be a bit like me. I've said that, that's what, and certainly within the college I work in, that I think is one of the things that I often say, particularly to our Baptist students who are trained for ministry. Because when we're sitting over meals, that's sometimes where the informality of eating and sharing and participating in space can bring out the best in people, because there's a sense of conviviality there. But some of the worst things that get said is often over a meal table that they wouldn't say in a classroom. Because in the classroom they'd be very conscious of the norms and the bounds. But over the meal table, so it's interesting how somehow grace gets told in a Christian college in a way that suddenly someone sitting next to you says, okay. So is that grace for you, or is that grace for me and for everyone?
Anthony, I've got a friend to catch. And I want to say something about this, very briefly. And just from my little corner of the universe, thank you for your question. I'm chair of a theology and religious studies department, and I'm quite new in it. And we want to get to an integration. So what does, to me, theology means you speak from within your conviction. Well, why should there only be Christians doing the theology, and everything else we treat as religion and we study it as religious studies? That's a weird colonial hangover. So we have to get way quickly beyond that.
I already asked a question, so they can ask me.
Oh, okay. Who's going to ask Vineet? Chander.
I'll ask.
And this is the last, except Anthony and Linda, you get a 30-second final word after this.
I can't do a 30-second stuff, so
How do we get the goddess into universities? Goddesses.
When I was very young, my mother was quite attached to me. She still is. And my mother, at the time, she's retired now, but she worked nights. She was a night nurse. And so my whole childhood, we were on this kind of reversed schedule all the time. And it was very difficult because at times I would have things like in school, and I would know my mother couldn't come to it because she was home sleeping, so that she could then wake up and work nights. So I was always a little heartbroken by that. And I remember once I was in a school drama, and I was acting in the drama, and I'd gotten like a lead role. And I really wished my mother could be there. And at a certain point I looked out into the crowd, and I saw way in the back, in the school auditorium, my mother was sitting there. So she had come. She would just rather stay awake and, disturb her sleep cycle, but she was there for me. And So I'm bringing that up because I'd like to flip around your question a little bit because I think she's there. So the question is not how do we get her there, the question is how do we learn to get out of ourselves and our patterns of all sorts of things, including a lot of internalized maybe patriarchy and other not so constructive systems and ideologies. How do we get ourselves out of the way enough to notice that she's there? She's been there the whole time.
You've got the last word, Linda.
I can't improve on that. Oops, absolutely, Jeremy and that was a wonderful last comment. Look, I think you all do an absolutely amazing job every day. I really do. I don't think you get enough praise or recognition for what you're doing, how difficult it often is, how challenging, how you pick up pieces of all sorts of things that other people can't or don't, how that's not recognised enough. And it's a real privilege to be part of these conversations. It's just a privilege to be with chaplains. It always is. I always learn a huge amount. And keep doing it. Get more money. Get more of you. Get more diversity. Do all the things that the panel has so well articulated. And I'm going to hand back to our leader.
I mean, we have to just say a massive thank you to all 9 of you, especially since I only started asking you after 6 a.m. this morning, and some at the very last minute. But what an amazing dialogue. And we will still get you on your train for 6 o'clock, so that's okay. And wow, we've got a bit more time now. Remember that it's drinks reception out in that beautiful quad where we had, most of us went out for lunch, and that runs from 6:45 until 7:30.